So this is how I've become a six-figure net worth property investor, and how the clients that I work with, typically you replace the income within about 5 years using the exact same system and methods that I use myself, with an end goal of £5,000 net income per month. Who am I? My name is Ryan Eastley. I've always lived in South Wales in the UK. It's where I've kind of grown up, and I know the area extremely well. I used to be an electrical engineer for 7 years, and I got into property alongside being an electrician, because I could almost look after my own properties and do bits and bobs like that alongside it. And I've actually, after about a couple of years, I actually entered into property full time. So I've now been in property full time for 4 or 5 years. So that's really allowed me to make a lot of mistakes, learn from it, kind of get educated into property fully, understand what a good investment and location actually is. And now I can help people basically not have to make the same mistakes, pretty much. So as you can see, I became an excellent landlord alongside being an engineer. In the long run, it's a very good investment, but I did make a lot of mistakes in purchasing said property, which I'll go through alongside with you now. I am 29 years old, just to clarify. I know I look about 12 years old, but I get it with every single new client. So just to clarify that one. This is my first buy-to-let I ever bought. So you can kind of see it's a very standard 3-bed terrace property in South Wales. Parking there, although not all properties have parking, but this one does, for example. But it's a good solid buy-to-let, which I can leave alone in that sense. The downsides that happened were I expected the interest rate to stay where it was. That was a mistake on my end, and again, a lot of this is realizing what is a good investment and what isn't, and realizing interest rates don't dictate your investment fully, but to be aware of them regardless. This property's got a 6% yield, which I thought at the time was fantastic. Turns out it's not. So yeah, but bear in mind this was 7 years ago when I was completely uneducated with property, just to bear that in mind. So yeah, 6% I thought was good. It's not, and that's something that I make sure that my clients that I work with are achieving the best yield for the investment they can get. Which is part of what our service does. We advertise those numbers that are realistic and achievable with said properties as we go along in that sense. So the core concept of what we do at Eastleigh Estate is literally portfolio building. That's obviously the conversation we got here, and that's obviously the purpose of the service. So with that in mind, we really do prioritize creating an investment journey plan with every client. So in the initial call that we'll find out from you, it's kind of like what you're looking to kind of achieve through property, what your situation is now financially, where you're looking to get to, etc. But the whole intention of it is to find out where you want to be in 5-10 years, so we can work backwards and literally create a personalized plan for you to then say, look, I know how to get you from point A to point B, if it's a realistic expectations to get there, if it's achievable. Let's make a plan so that every single year we can say, okay, after 5 years, here's the goal. Let's work backwards. Create a customized plan that fits your needs, your criteria, etc. And then every year, every 6 months, every 12, 18 months, we know exactly where we need to be as a guideline to kind of fulfill those goals to then reach the end target, if that makes sense. So again, we have a customized plan for every client where we sit down and make the plan for you to make sure it's structured correctly with your starting budget and your end goal in mind. Year on year, we've got a plan of how to get you, literally every 12 months, how to get you from point here to point here. As like a stepping stone, and then clarity on the end goal to make sure we're on the same page at the start, to make sure the end goal is realistic with the starting budget, but then also making sure that we can achieve it and even have more. You know, you can go over 5k for example after 5 years with some of the ways that we operate. It just depends how you want to play it, and we provide transparency and confidence in every single situation. So communication is everything with what we do, and being transparent and communicative with every single stage really helps. And we do find that the first project can be the most friction in terms of getting things going in that sense, and every project afterwards really does boost the confidence in the system and in us in terms of what we're offering in that sense. So we've sat down with you, we've onboarded you, we've made a 5 or 10 year plan with you, we know your criteria. What's next? So whilst you're working your 9 to 5, very busy doing stuff, this is what we get up to in the background. So with your criteria and budget in mind, we're going out, we're marketing for you, talk to agents, doing our marketing with our leaflets, letters, We're doing Facebook ads. There's a lot of marketing that we do to find properties that fit within the criteria of our clients. So what we do is when we actually find a suitable property, we go out and view it for you. We'll do a full video walkthrough of the property to make sure that it is as we're saying, and also we'll do an estimated refurbishment cost to calculate what the refurb cost would be. With that in mind, we'll also present to you what we've agreed the price with the vendor for, the seller of the property, to make sure that we've got a discount in the property. So that leads on to number 2 here. So when we're presenting the property to you, we're saying here's the agreed price with the vendor, here's the refurbishment cost alongside a full refurb breakdown that we've calculated for you, predicted refurb. And also here's expected rental income once renovated and end value of the property once renovated. So we're collating all this information for you. It'll also include your solicitor fees, and it'll also include any stamp duty as well. So that's in there as well. We're also considering the area. So the area is very important in property. Location is very, very important. So we're considering crime rates. We're considering tenant demand, making sure there's schools, amenities in the location. There's work demand, etc., etc. All these things that tenants want and need to make sure that you've got long-term tenants in your property. So once you give the green light on that, we'll organise the solicitors for you. We provide solicitors and mortgage brokers to make sure that we can get the lending sorted out for you, and we can also get it in conveyancing for you. We can provide all that. It's not an issue at all for us. Once the property's in legals, i.e. solicitors have been instructed, we'll also organise the building work in the background. So again, you're not having to do any of this at all. We're cracking on with the work. We're doing all this for you. We're just communicating to you what we're doing, and to make sure you can see the step by step. So we got, let's say at this stage we've got the property and conveyancing, going through legals, etc. In the background, we're organising the building work so that we can organise that. So we've got a schedule of works ready for you, so that week on week on week we can see what's going to happen when the actual work is going ahead. But also, very importantly, we're making sure the building work is able to start as close to the purchase price, as close to the completion of the purchase as possible. So if we're completing on the property on the 20th of March, we want to make sure the 29th of March, or a day or two after, for example, we are cracking on with the refurb straight away. So you don't want a void period of an empty property that you've just purchased, because that time is money, and you want to make sure that you've got the refurb in straight away. So we're organising that in the background. We'll also project manage the property for you in terms of the refurb. So we're managing the entire refurbishment project for you. We do set up a WhatsApp group with said client and the builder and ourselves to keep communication very open and transparent in terms of what's going ahead and what's going on. We also do a weekly check-in call on the refurb side to it to say here's what's going on, because you'll have from the builder a schedule of works that says week 1 this is what's going on, week 2 this is what's going on, etc., etc. And we can make sure that what the schedule of works and what we're reporting is in coalition, so that helps. We'll also do a video walkthrough, so we can see every single week or every single 10 days, you can see literally what's going on through the video of what's going on, if that makes sense. Once renovated, we get refinanced on the property, because we're going to be organising the letting side. So once we've actually got the property fully renovated, beautiful property, fully lovely and new, we're organising the letting out for it, so that we can actually have, as soon as it's refurbished, we can get a refinance on the property, but then also have it letted out straight away, or as close to, so there's no void period, because you don't want to be paying a mortgage on a property with no actual income from a tenant in there, do you? So we're making sure that's absolutely essentially done ASAP for every client. So all of this means that we do this for all of our clients, so we know exactly what stage to do things at and when to kind of get things sorted out in what order, and it allows things to run smoothly, so that all we're doing is checking in with you to make sure this is going on all right, this is going ahead, just to keep things easy and transparent in that sense. And then once you've got your money in the bank, we go again. So take Tom. Tom's one of our bespoke clients, and he lives all the way in Cornwall. He reached out to us through Facebook several months ago, and what we did was we sat down with him and said, look, you live 4 hours away, because it's about a 4-hour drive from Cornwall, and we said, look, where are you now, and where do you want to be in 4, 5, 6 years? And we made a plan with him. We structured it to make sure it was realistic and relevant. And then once we made the plan and he was happy with that, he was content with that, we went out shopping for him. We found a property that was ideal, that needed a big refurb on it. It needs about 50k with a refurb work on it. We secured it for a good discount, so we had built-in equity from day one there for him. We also managed to avoid stamp duty for him as well, so that was fantastic for him. Helped with the ROI on the investment. We've renovated the property for Tom. We've dealt with the solicitors for Tom as well, and the broker for the lending side to it, the mortgage broker, that is. So everything has been very, very hands-off for him. He hasn't had to get involved. And also, once the property is renovated, because it's going to be completing very, very soon, we're going to be managing the property for him as well. So the actual letting of the property as well will be managed by us, making the complete end-to-end fully hands-off in that sense. Again, we managed to secure it for a good discount so that once renovated, he'll have 25, nearly 30k of equity immediately sat there once it's letted out. And it also means he'll have at least £3,000 annual net income from that one property, which is fully leveraged. So if you can imagine, if you're doing one property every 6 months of 3k bare minimum net income, and you're compounding that over several properties, that can be substantial when you're not having to do anything, when you're working every day. We're doing this for you in the background. And he's very, very happy with the service. Had a meet up with Tom at the property the other week, and he was very happy with that. He popped in to say hello, because we do a weekly call with him. When a refurb's ongoing, we do a weekly check-in to make sure he's happy with everything, everything's good. Just communicate the schedule to make sure everything is on time, on track. This is a little review he left saying he really enjoyed working with us. So that was fantastic, because Tom's end goal is literally to spend more time with his family, loved ones, and he works full time. He has his own company in Cornwall. He wants to get out of that. So we do work with people who are working alongside what they're doing, but also really want to get out of it after several months. They don't want to jump out fully, but they want to gradually ease out of it, and they have the money sat in the bank. They want to utilize it into the portfolio, and then build it that way. And obviously the portfolio is going to give him consistent cash flow that's leveraged, and he doesn't have to be an expert on property in order to do this, really, in that sense. So as much as we love working with people and helping people with the service, we really think it's important to be transparent and honest at the start, to say who this isn't for as much as anything, so that we can make sure that we're on the same page from the very get-go. So we have 3 main titles, subjects that we work with in this sense. So the first and most obvious one is making sure that the person we're working with has the finances in order to actually fund what they're doing. So if you've got less than £100,000, it may not work for you. We do say there's a bit of a flip side to this, where we do have some clients with 80k, for example, who we can work with. So there is a bit of play with those numbers, but anything less than 70k, for example, it definitely will not work in that sense. But if you've got 100k plus, realistically, that's the best position you could possibly be in to make this work, and make this work quickly to achieve that 5k per month. Core values, really important for us to make sure that respect and transparency, particularly respect, is there from the get-go. And I really think that helps build trust in the long run, and making sure realistic expectations are met from the get-go as well. Because if you're expecting to get rich from property, you may hear online a lot about the crazy expectations that people promise. We like to be realistic from the get-go to make sure that we know what we can provide, and we know this works because we do it for ourselves and clients every day. So I want to make sure the expectations are met at the start, or at least set at the start, should I say, so that we know moving forward what we can actually provide and that we're on the same page. So that's really, really important for us. So who is this for? This is for people who have at least 80k in the bank, ideally 100k and more, realistically, liquid cash available to go. They don't have the time or expertise to know about where to get involved with property investing. They don't know the benefits of property. They've heard about property gurus, maybe this and that, but in reality, don't know where to start, how to get anywhere about it. They've got money set in the bank, they want to utilize it, they don't know how to start. Typically, we work with working professionals who work a lot of hours, very busy, and again, don't have the time. They don't have the experience, but mainly the time in order to get involved in property. But they do want to create a side income so that they're not just solely reliant on their pension, solely reliant on crypto and all this kind of messy stuff, right? They want to have a low risk, secure investment that they can accumulate in the background that's going to compound and compound over the years. That's the main priority here. But they don't have the knowledge or experience to actually get there and do it without making a hell of a lot of mistakes and do it blindly, to be honest with you. It's also for people who aren't interested in the banking rates. We all know the rates of the bank are crazy low, like let's say less than 5%, hypothetically, depending on obviously how you do it, what you do. Realistically, every single one of our typical investments is a minimum of 20% ROI. For a bit of context, you can see the significant increase. Despite being a low risk investment property can be, it's still a very, very high ROI for that investment. So yeah, people who don't understand stocks trading and stuff, it's all like, you never want to make an investment you don't understand. So you want to work. So this is why this service exists, to work with people who understand the investment, such as property, to help you. This is what we're here for. Generational wealth is a big one for a lot of our clients. They actually want to make sure that their children benefit, but also the children's children benefit from the portfolio. Because what people often do is create a company to invest the portfolio into, which we can get to a later date, of course. And then they have this company that's cash flowing, that's totally leveraged. We're managing all the portfolio for them, and it's just accumulating. And the appreciation of the portfolio is increasing all the time, every year, or in theory, every year. In fact, it's probably doubling every 10 years historically. So that's a huge benefit. But the point is that the children, generational wealth that it creates can be substantial over the long run. But it's also people who are ready to take action. If you're on the fence about things, if you're not too sure about things, I get it. But one of the biggest conversations I have with clients who don't take action is, I've seen what you're doing. I really wish I did it 6 months ago. Well, now's the time to take action and to make sure in 6 months you're not regretting it now. The fear of missing out, you've got to be careful with it. But in reality, you have to make sure that you're taking action. Because without taking the action, without attacking this and actually really implementing it straight away, following our lead to make sure that we can actually instruct and actually show you the proper way to do this, it won't actually happen. So you have to be ready to act on this, be ready to attack it, but also, really importantly, understand the properties get rich slow. The first couple of investments, typically it has the most friction, it has the most gradual build on them. So for example, let's say you make 2 properties and they bring you £500 net per month each. That's £500, that's great. But the real benefit is when you have a portfolio of 6, 7, 8 properties compounding, the cash flow replaces your income after 2, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. But then the appreciation on top, it really does build. So understanding properties get rich slow, it takes time to build up, and it's also for people who are ready to actually take the action now to benefit in the future. So why not do it yourself? Why do you even need us? So one of the biggest issues that I find with new people who come to us is they've looked at investing elsewhere. They were kind of looking at things, they were dipping a toe into things, but they weren't committing because they weren't sure about things, they weren't sure about location, they weren't sure about figures. Refurb costs can be very, very critical. You have to get those right. Also, how to calculate end values. There's so many multitude of factors that we work day in, day out with, but people don't know them. And this is what we're here for. If you've got experience guidance that you can work with, where we can guide you on making sure proactively things are done so that you can avoid making mistakes, you can save time in the future, you can save a lot of stress going for us. So if you let's say you went into a property and you were like, okay, I want to buy this one, but in reality you don't know what the market's like, you don't know if property prices are going up, going down, you don't know if the area works for what the outcome is, for what the end goal is, you don't know the crime rates. You may know your local area, but it goes back to my very first property where I was uneducated and didn't know. I would have bought the same property, but not in the same way, which shows me that it was a good investment because property is a good investment long term, but you avoid so many mistakes working with people who know what they're doing and do this every single day and can be proactive to make sure mistakes aren't made. You're also lowering the risk because you're making sure your refurbs are calculated, you're making sure your end values are calculated correctly, you're making sure any taxes are worked out the best way, because a lot of tax can be very, very important to work around properly. So there's all these factors to really make sure that you're benefiting with, and literally this is what our intention is to give you the best investment possible and the best investments to build up your portfolio. And to do that, we have your best interest at heart, which means that we want to lower the risk for you as much as possible, which means getting your numbers correct. It means making sure you can, if you can avoid the stamp duty if possible on one or so projects, if it complies, making sure the end value is realistic, making sure you got your rental income, making sure the crime rate's good so the house isn't getting broken into every day. It's lowering the risk for your benefit. And time. We work with a lot of busy professionals who have very little time in the day, hence why we're in the background doing this all for them. So if you don't have the time but you've got the cash in the bank, then you're not going to have time to look on Rightmove, to go to viewings, to calculate these things, to know where to even begin, and that's where we help in that sense. So take Jack. He's another one of our bespoke clients, and he recently finished on a project, his first project with us in South Wales, and basically he's all the way from London, so he's a good 3.5 hours drive away. He didn't want to come up. He came up for the interview, for the photos and etc. that you can see in the photo here, but he didn't want to come up for the project, doesn't want to come up for conveyancing. We were doing all this in the background for him because he didn't have the time, didn't know South Wales. Like if you're in London, property's cheaper in South Wales, but you don't know the ins and outs of it. You don't know which areas are cheaper than others. People assume Cardiff is great. It can be and it cannot be depending on what your end goal is. There's several factors with that. So it was really beneficial for Jack, who lives in London, to kind of invest with us. And the irony is I had a conversation with Jack the other week because, again, we're in regular contact. It's what we really like to do. And he's now so happy with the first project. He's now looking to build on to bigger projects. So the first plan with him was single lets. But now it's a case of doing a single let, doing another single let, but then going on to a bigger project afterwards to help us build our portfolio. So it's kind of like, because we do bigger stuff in the background as well. So so that's the sort of stuff that he's really keen on. So you can see he's seen what we're doing on social media, and you can see that we're really expanding our portfolio. And now he's like, I want the bigger stuff now. So he's really built trust with us. You can see that we're transparent. He really likes the service. And yeah, that's really where he's at with it. So he's very happy right now. He bought the house for £90,000. He renovated it. Cost about £25,000. He was whiny, but he added a bit of conservatory and a new garden on the back end of the property. The revalue came to £150,000. So after the refurbishment cost, the actual equity in the property was about £25,000, which is fantastic for him. So he's actually going to make about £3,000 net on this every single year. In addition to what he's already doing, so he's going to have a company open. He's going to have £3,000 net going into that every single year. That's fully managed, fully leveraged in that sense. So in the very first year, the actual ROI on just the first year of that property is over 21%, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So again, he lives hours away. We've sat down with him. We've made a plan. We've found out what his criteria is, what his budget is. He's took an action. He's gone ahead with it. He's done what he needs to do. And we're doing the work in the background. We organise the lending for him with the broker. We organise the listing for him for the solicitor to make sure conveyancing was correct, and then cracked on from there. And then he's going to get a refinance, and we're good to go. So he's a very happy customer. So I think a safe way to end this now is to say what are some of the common questions that we actually have from clients, especially new ones. So one of the most common ones that the news affects, and so media news affects, and people get concerned with is interest rates. Now, the flip side of this is, remember that property is a long-term investment. Interest rates are a short-term metric. They can affect the investment, and they're very, very important to consider. They're very, very important to consider. But in reality, you want to make sure that you're not solely investing on any property solely because of interest rates, or not because of interest rates. So got to be very careful with that, because they can fluctuate, change every single week. You've got to have a long-term mindset with property, and interest rates, they should be considered. Very, very important to consider them. And we'll give you an overview of how the market is at the time. We'll show you what lending is available when we present a property through our broker. But in reality, it shouldn't be the sole reason for doing something, because there are short-term metrics, and property can outweigh all of that in the long run. If you live in South Wales, or you live far away from South Wales, how much control do you have of what's going on? If things go wrong, what sort of issues, like how are things resolved? So we have a mentality of communication is incredibly important, hence why we do calls every single week, check-ins, etc. But it's also, we like to have a mentality of every time there's a problem arises, we like to have a solution brought to it alongside. So if we've got a breakdown on a reefer, for example, we like to say, here's the problem, but also here's the solution. We're rectifying this for you, or here's the solution to do so. And then we're cracking on that way. We're doing the work for you. Again, there's no need for someone to drive all the way down to resolve it themselves, because we're doing this for you. We're managing the project, we're managing those bits, we're managing the entire full end-to-end. So that's where communication becomes important, and we're dealing with this, and this is normal for us to do so. We expect things to go wrong. We expect there to be complications, issues. We expect all those complications. That's normal for us in every day. It's about how you react to it, and it's about having a positive, proactive response, or at least a reactive response, but being proactive with other things as much as possible. So yeah, that's that really. So we communicate, keep things on track, and make sure to provide solutions when there's problems in there. Last of all, which is quite important, is what sort of properties do we actually focus on and where. South Wales is our niched area. We're very, very niche location-wise. We have about 20-mile radius in South Wales we operate in, that I've always lived in. I live about half an hour away from the location, so I know it incredibly well. We typically work with properties that are 2 to 4 bed terrace properties. Down the bottom here, 2 to 4 bed terrace properties, under terrace, etc. Very good, solid family housing. You've got a 2 to 4 bed terrace property, you've got schools, you've got shops, you've got industrial estates, you've got places for people to work. It's good, solid tenant foundations. So that's with a good yield. That really helps. I know the area extremely well, so I know all those bits and bobs about crime rates. I know how to find that information. I know which areas avoiding 100% and those sort of things. And then, yeah, one of the magical things I really like about South Wales is we have found a trend here where clients who have a capital of £120,000 or more, they can actually recycle that cash 6 or 7 times. And by doing so, you can almost replace an entire UK average salary through doing so. So you could actually create about a £3,000 net income per month by constantly recycling £120,000. That is how powerful South Wales is, with the low buying and high yield. That is gold dust. And then you can have an appreciating 6 or 7 property portfolio in the background, cash flowing every single month, every single year. That is the beauty of it. So this is why we say 9% yield is reasonable, is actually what we expect in South Wales, and it's very, very good for buy to let. Even if interest rates go up, it's still cash flows, which is absolutely imperative. But it also means that you'll have the appreciation on top of those for every single property, compounding for every single property. So yeah, that's why we recommend to have at least £100,000 pot to utilise, and you can really get this going and scale quickly by utilising us in that sense.